Is Tesla's TSP-420 actually the king of solar, or is it all just marketing hype? We're putting its 18 independent power zones to the ultimate test by simulating real-world obstructions like chimney shadows and debris. Watch as we measure real-time voltage drops against the world's 3 highest efficiency competitors from Maxeon, IEC, and Jinko to see which panel actually survives the shade. If you want to stay ahead of the energy revolution and master the tech that's powering the future of the American home, do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive. And if this video helped you understand the new Tesla 420W panels, give it a like and share it with someone looking to go off-grid. Join the Volt and Vessel community. Let's future-proof your home together. Before we talk about Tesla's boldest claim in solar, we need to talk about the real enemy, not a cheaper competitor, not a manufacturing defect. The real enemy of every solar panel sitting on every rooftop in America right now is something so simple, so unavoidable, that most solar salespeople will never mention it during their pitch. It is a shadow. And today we are going to show you exactly what a shadow does to a conventional panel, why it is so catastrophic, and whether Tesla has actually solved it or whether this is just another round of beautifully produced marketing dressed up in technical language. To understand why Tesla built the TSP-420 the way they did, you first have to understand how a traditional solar panel is wired, because the architecture has not fundamentally changed in decades. A standard module, even a premium one from a reputable manufacturer, is typically divided into 3 large vertical strings. Think of the panel as being split into 3 equal columns, and each of those columns is one continuous electrical circuit running from the top of the panel all the way to the bottom. Protecting each of those 3 strings is a single bypass diode, which is essentially a safety valve built into the junction box on the back of the panel. Those bypass diodes exist for one reason, and that reason is to prevent something called a hot spot. When shade falls on a portion of a string, the shaded cells stop producing electricity, but the rest of the string is still trying to push current through them. That forces the shaded cells to consume power instead of generate it, which creates intense localized heat that can physically burn and permanently damage the panel. The bypass diode steps in to stop that from happening by cutting off the entire string and routing power around it. It is a clever solution to a dangerous problem, but the side effect is enormous. The moment that diode trips, you do not lose the power from just the shaded cells. You lose the power from every single cell in that entire string. That means one leaf, one narrow chimney shadow, one bird dropping landing on the wrong 2 inches of your panel is capable of shutting down 33% of your total output in an instant. And if the shading happens to overlap 2 strings at once, which is entirely possible on a complex suburban rooftop with a chimney or a gable or a tree nearby, you are not losing 1/3 of your panel. You are losing 2/3. On a perfectly sunny afternoon, with clean blue sky overhead, your expensive solar insulation is producing a fraction of what you paid for, and you would never know it just by looking at the sky. This is a problem that Tesla set out to solve when they borrowed cascading cell technology directly from the Solar Roof program and engineered it into the TSP-420. Instead of 3 strings and 3 bypass diodes, the TSP-420 is built around 18 independent power zones. Each zone is its own isolated electrical circuit, and each one operates completely independently from the others. The cells themselves are shingled, meaning they overlap one another like fish scales rather than sitting side by side with metal ribbons connecting them. That overlapping design allows Tesla to pack more active cell surface into the same panel footprint while simultaneously eliminating the gaps and visible bus bars that conventional panels rely on to carry current between cells. Think about what 18 independent zones actually means in practice by picturing a highway. A conventional panel is a 3-lane highway, and the moment a single car crash blocks one lane, that entire lane shuts down and every car behind it stops moving. 1/3 of the road is gone. Tesla's architecture is an 18-lane superhighway, and when a crash happens in lane 7, lanes 1 through 6 and lanes 8 through 18 never slow down. Only 1/18 of the road is affected, and everything else keeps moving at full speed. That is not a marketing analogy. That is a literal electrical behavior of the panel under partial shading, and we are going to measure it with real equipment later in this video. The cascading design also addresses a problem that most buyers never think about when comparing panels on a spec sheet. Most competitors, including the Jinko Tiger Neo 3.0, which sits near the very top of the global efficiency rankings, use multi-busbar technology. Multi-busbar means there are dozens of thin silver wires running across the face of the cell to collect current and carry it to the edges of the panel. Those wires are visible. They are physical objects sitting on top of the cell surface, and because they are physical objects, they cast micro-shadows on the cells beneath them. The irony is that the wiring designed to collect sunlight is simultaneously blocking a small but measurable amount of it. Tesla's shingle cascading design eliminates visible bus bars entirely. The surface is pure black, completely uniform, and every square millimeter of it is exposed directly to incoming light. The durability implications of this architecture are just as significant as the shading performance. Conventional panels connect their cells using soldered metal ribbons, and solder is rigid. Over the lifetime of a panel on a real rooftop, temperatures swing from below freezing on a winter night to above 185 degrees Fahrenheit on a summer afternoon. That thermal expansion and contraction cycles through the panel thousands of times over 25 years, and rigid solder connections are constantly being stressed by that movement. The result is microcracking, tiny fractures in the cell material and the connections between them that accumulate slowly and silently, degrading output year after year in ways that never show up dramatically on a monitoring dashboard but absolutely show up on your electricity bill over a decade. Tesla's cascading cells are bonded with electrically conductive adhesive rather than solder. That adhesive is flexible. It moves with the panel through every thermal cycle without cracking, which is why Tesla's degradation data over a simulated 25-year lifespan shows meaningfully fewer microfractures than conventional solder designs under the same conditions. The architecture is not just smarter in the shade. It is built to stay that way for the entire life of the system. If you have ever shopped for solar panels online, you have seen the efficiency number. It is the first stat on every spec sheet, the biggest number on every manufacturer's marketing page, and it is a figure that most homeowners use to make a $30,000 decision. Higher efficiency means better panel, right? That is the assumption the entire industry is built on, and it is the assumption we are going to dismantle right now with real measurements on real equipment. Because the efficiency number you are being sold is calculated in a laboratory under conditions that have almost nothing to do with the roof above your house. Here is where every major panel stands as of 2026 under standard test conditions, which is a controlled laboratory environment the industry uses as its universal benchmark. The Maxeon 7 sits at the absolute top of the leaderboard at 24.1% efficiency, making it the most powerful panel per square foot that money can buy. Directly behind it is a Jinko Tiger Neo 3.0 at 24%, which delivers nearly identical peak performance at a significantly lower price point. The IEC Alpha Pure X comes in at 22.6%, which sounds like a step down until you understand what heterojunction cell technology actually does in real-world heat, and we will get to that in a moment. And then there is the Tesla TSP-420 sitting at 20.5%, which on paper looks like the underdog, the weakest performer in a lineup of world-class competitors, and which is exactly what most people conclude before they ever put these panels under anything other than perfect laboratory light. The problem with standard test conditions is in the name. They are standard. They are controlled. They assume a cell temperature of exactly 25 degrees Celsius, full uniform irradiance across the entire panel surface, and zero shading of any kind. That environment describes a solar testing facility in a lab. It does not describe a house in Connecticut with a chimney on the south face, or a home in Georgia with an oak tree that throws a shadow across the lower third of the array every morning, or a roof in California with a gable vent that creates a narrow stripe of shade for 90 minutes each afternoon. Standard test conditions describe a perfect world, and you do not live in a perfect world. You live on a complex suburban rooftop, and that changes everything. To show you exactly how much it changes, we ran 2 shade tests using controlled obstructions and live voltage measurement equipment. In the first test, we simulated a chimney shadow by blocking exactly 10% of each panel's total surface area, with a uniform obstruction placed to replicate the narrow vertical shadow a chimney casts in mid-morning light. On the Maxeon 7, which is the efficiency king, that 10% obstruction forced one of its 3 bypass diodes to trip, taking an entire string offline. The result was a power output drop of between 30 and 40% depending on exactly where the shadow fell relative to the string boundaries. 10% of the panel's surface was covered, and 30 to 40% of its power disappeared. That is not a flaw in the Maxeon 7 specifically. That is a fundamental limitation of three-string architecture, and it applies equally to the Jinko Tiger Neo and to virtually every other conventional panel on the market, regardless of how high its efficiency rating climbs in the lab. When we ran the identical test on the Tesla TSP-420, blocking the same 10% of surface area with the same obstruction in the same position, the result was completely different. Because the affected cells belonged to only one or two of the 18 independent power zones, only those zones went offline. The other 16 zones kept producing at full output without interruption. Total power loss was roughly 10%, which corresponds almost exactly to the percentage of surface area that was actually shaded. The panel lost power in direct proportion to the shade it received rather than losing power in catastrophic multiples of it. Under that same 10% chimney shadow, the Maxeon 7 were producing 60 to 70% of its rated output, while the Tesla TSP-420 were producing 90% of its rated output. On paper, the Maxeon is a stronger panel. On your roof under that chimney, the Tesla is producing more electricity. The second variable that the efficiency leaderboard completely ignores is heat, and heat is unavoidable on a rooftop in a way that shade, at least theoretically, is not. Every solar panel loses efficiency as its temperature rises above 25 degrees Celsius, and the rate at which it loses that efficiency is called the temperature coefficient. This number is expressed as percentage of power lost per degree of temperature increase, and it is one of the most underreported specifications in the entire industry. The IEC Alpha Purex has the best temperature coefficient in the world for 2026 at negative 0.24% per degree Celsius, meaning it loses less power as it heats up than any other panel currently available to residential buyers. The Tesla TSP-420 comes in at negative 0.26% per degree, which is close enough to the IEC that on most rooftops the difference is negligible, and it beats the majority of mid-tier panels from Chinese manufacturers by a meaningful margin. The Maxeon 7 and the Jinko Tiger Neo, despite their superior efficiency ratings under lab conditions, carry higher temperature coefficients that cause them to lose more power as the afternoon heat builds on a real roof. What this means in practice is best understood through the full shape of a solar production day rather than just a peak noon hour. A conventional efficiency comparison focuses entirely on what happens between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. when the sun is directly overhead. The irradiance is at its maximum, and shading is at its minimum. In those 2 hours, yes, the Maxeon 7 wins. Its 24.1% efficiency is real, and it produces more watts per square foot than the Tesla during that window. But a rooftop solar system does not only operate between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. It operates from the moment the sun clears the horizon in the morning to the moment it drops below the tree line in the evening, and the hours at the beginning and end of that window are exactly when shade is longest. Temperatures are changing most rapidly, and the architectural differences between these panels matter most. When you account for shaded morning hours between 8 and 10 a.m., shaded late afternoon hours between 3 and 5 p.m., and the heat-driven efficiency losses that accumulate across the full midday window, the Tesla TSP-420's total annual energy yield on a complex suburban rooftop frequently exceeds what the Maxeon 7 produces on the same roof. The metric that captures this is called specific yield, measured in total kilowatt hours produced per year relative to the panel's rated capacity, and it is a number that actually determines how much your electricity bill goes down. A panel that produces 10% more power during the 4 shaded shoulder hours of the day, but 4% less during the 2 peak noon hours comes out ahead in total annual kilowatt hours on any roof that experiences real-world shading. That is not a theoretical advantage. That is a number that shows up in your monitoring app every single day for the next 25 years, and it is a number that determines when this system pays for itself. Everything we have covered so far has been about the panel itself, the cell architecture, the shading performance, the temperature behavior, the real-world yield numbers. But a solar panel is not a product you buy in isolation. It is one component in a system, and the total cost, total reliability, and total return on that system depends just as heavily on everything around the panel as it does on the panel itself. The inverter it connects to, the mounting hardware it sits on, the labor required to install it, the warranty backing it up, and the company standing behind that warranty 20 years from now. This is where Tesla's story gets more complicated, and this is where the honest answer to which panel you should actually buy becomes less about specifications and more about the specific roof above your head. For most of the last decade, the industry's answer to shading problems was not better panel architecture. It was microinverters. The logic was straightforward. A string inverter converts the DC electricity produced by your entire array into the AC electricity your home uses, and it does that conversion at the array level, meaning the performance of your weakest panel drags down the output of every other panel connected to it. Microinverters solve that by putting a small individual inverter directly behind each panel, so every panel operates completely independently and a shaded panel cannot pull down its neighbors. Enphase became $1 billion company largely on the strength of that solution, and for roofs with significant shading challenges, it was genuinely the right answer for a long time. Tesla's argument with the TSP-420 is that 18 independent power zones make that solution unnecessary. Because shading is already isolated at the zone level within the panel itself, a Tesla string inverter connected to an array of TSP-420s behaves functionally like a microinverter system without requiring a separate piece of hardware behind every single panel. You get the shading resilience of distributed architecture at the cost structure of a centralized one, and that distinction matters more than most buyers realize when they are sitting across the table from a solar salesperson reviewing a proposal. The reliability data on inverters is worth understanding clearly before you make that decision. Microinverters carry a failure rate of roughly 1 in 800 units, which sounds reassuringly low until you consider that a typical residential installation might have 20 to 30 of them on the roof simultaneously. A string inverter carries a higher individual failure rate of roughly 1 in 350, but there's only one of them. It sits on the ground or on a wall in your garage, and replacing it costs about 33% less than a rooftop microinverter repair because no one has to climb onto your roof with tools and work around live electrical equipment at height. The math on lifetime maintenance costs is closer between these two approaches than the raw failure rate suggests, and Tesla's position is that the combination of panel-level shading resilience and ground-level inverter serviceability gives you the best of both worlds without the premium that a full microinverter installation adds to your upfront cost. The mounting system is where Tesla makes perhaps its least discussed but most financially significant argument. The TSP-420 uses what Tesla calls a groove mounting system, a rail-less frame design that the panel clicks directly into without requiring the traditional aluminum rail infrastructure that runs across most residential rooftops. The data on this system is concrete, and it shows up directly in the installation cost. Rail-less mounting is 33% faster to install than conventional rail systems, and it requires 15% fewer roof penetrations, meaning 15% fewer holes drilled through your roof deck, 15% fewer potential leak points, and 15% less flashing hardware to source, carry up a ladder, and seal correctly. In the solar industry, these are called soft costs, the labor and hardware costs that sit outside the panel and inverter themselves. And soft costs have become one of the most significant battlegrounds in residential solar pricing because the hardware costs of premium panels have compressed while labor costs have not. This is where Tesla attempts to close the gap with Maxeon in total installed system cost. The Maxeon 7 is a more efficient panel and it carries a longer warranty, but Maxeon hardware is expensive and it installs on conventional railed systems with conventional labor times. Tesla's panel is premium hardware that installs faster, penetrates the roof less, and integrates natively with Tesla's own inverter and Powerwall ecosystem. For a homeowner who is also considering battery storage, that native integration eliminates compatibility questions, simplifies monitoring through a single app, and in many cases reduces the total labor cost of combined solar and storage installation compared to mixing hardware from multiple manufacturers. The warranty comparison is one area where Tesla cannot claim a win and should not pretend to. Maxeon offers a 40-year product and performance warranty, which is the longest in the residential solar industry by a significant margin, and reflects genuine confidence in the longevity of their IBC cell technology. Tesla and IEC both offer 25-year warranties, which is the industry standard and is perfectly adequate coverage for a system whose financial payback period on most rooftops falls somewhere between 8 and 12 years. You will have recouped your investment well before either warranty expires. But if your decision framework includes the longest possible manufacturer guarantee as a meaningful factor, Maxeon wins that comparison without contest, and it is not close. So here's the honest verdict after everything we have measured, tested, and calculated. If you have a small roof with a clean southern exposure, no obstructions, no trees, no chimneys, and you want to squeeze the absolute maximum number of watts out of every square foot of available space, the Maxeon 7 is a panel you buy. Its efficiency advantage is real in that environment, and the 40-year warranty is a genuine differentiator. If you are in Arizona, Texas, Nevada, or anywhere else where rooftop temperatures regularly exceed 150 degrees Fahrenheit for extended periods, and heat is your single biggest performance enemy. The IEC Alpha PX and its best-in-class temperature coefficient is a panel built for your climate. But if your roof looks like most roofs in most American suburbs, with a chimney on one side, a gable vent breaking up the surface, a tree that throws a shadow across the lower array in the morning, and a roof line that was designed by an architect who had never once thought about solar optimization, then the Tesla TSP-420 is a panel that will produce the most electricity on your specific roof over the life of your system. Not because it is the strongest panel in a laboratory, because it is the smartest panel on a real rooftop, and your rooftop is not a laboratory.